So could you explain maybe a little bit about NIPs and how the community gets involved and how they can contribute?
So I'd say we have to separate a couple of issues. One is like the NIP process, but also that's not how. I mean, the fact that it's owned by the community is a separate issue to the NIP process. So the NIP, like, you're sure anyone can contribute a NIP and whatever, right? But I mean, like social, open source projects are always like that. Like anyone can contribute, and there are maintainers and whatever. And it's like there are so many systems where it's like, oh, it's open, anyone can contribute, but then you find out actually not really. Um, so like with NIPs, so there's the key difference between a NIP and a BIP is with Bitcoin, it's like you really need upfront agreement from everyone before you can implement a NIP into Bitcoin, because everyone's got to come to consensus over the same thing. With Nostr, you don't need that. So a BIP is Bitcoin improvement. What's the word? I got a mental blank. Bitcoin improvement.
Oh, proposal.
Proposal.
Yeah.
So, but a NIP is a Nostr improvement possibility. So they're different in that way, as like exactly as you'd expect. So a NIP, like in order for a NIP to really be taken seriously, it needs to be. You can propose something, but it's like, where is it implemented? Who's implemented it? And where is it being used? Because you can implement stuff immediately in Nostr. Like if you want a NIP that's relevant to relays, like a way for relays to handle messages in a specific way or something. Well, you can implement that right. You can implement that right now. You don't need permission from anyone, and you can use it right now, and then other people can use it and see how it goes. The same as like on like a client, like you can propose a NIP to do something on the client side, like a way to handle Lightning payments or whatever. Okay, propose the possibility, and then implement it somewhere and show us how it works. And then it will get taken seriously, right? And then, so NIPs are generally not merged into the GitHub repo unless they're implemented like at least like twice in two different projects. Because in the early days, it was like just implement it in one project or just have a proof of concept. But the bar is raised now because there's like so many NIPs. So like, so now it's like, okay, like let's see a few people implement
See
this.
it working across multiple domains. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I see. That's useful.
Yeah. But there's no sort of roadblock to doing that. There's no, you don't really need.
You don't need the
like,
App Store's permission to put the whatever the friggin' extension is for. Or, you know, in the same way Android, you have an APK, you've got to get it on. Android's a little more open, but maybe you know, the iPhone's a better example. Like if you want to tinker, if you want to make an app, and you want to put, you can do that, right? You can get the iOS dev tools or whatever, and you can create stuff, but you can't put it out to the public and test it. You know, you don't have that permission. You have to ask Apple's permission to be able to release that to public. So I would think, in terms of the value of experimentation, adaptation, evolution, you know, how fast these things can move, how fast other people can contribute. You can get a prototype out there, and you can get feedback, and it can adapt and evolve in its extremely like quick way. In comparison to the, you know, old or traditional existing paradigms of, like, you know, the Apple App Store or the Windows Store, or, you know, any of these kind of things. So I think that's like a really cool side of this whole ecosystem. Like as you say, you know, you can just build whenever you want. You don't have to ask anyone for permission. And it's not just about like permission. It's not this kind of, oh, screw the authorities kind of thing. We want it. It is about that, in a sense, but it's the main benefit of that permissionlessness, or the idea that you can just build on it and you can create your own thing, is that it actually advances the tech faster. The problem with the permissioned models is that it's slow, it's bureaucratic. It's actually a bad way to make things. Not always. Obviously, there are places for centralized services and proprietary software or whatever. I guess there's a debate about that as well. If some people think everything should be open source, but or Libre open source. I think is it Libre free. I think that's the distinction. Excuse me. But yeah, to me that's what stands out. Like I love the fact that anyone can just build upon these systems. But I think maybe more important is the way that makes the systems evolve. I think like people don't realize like how much innovation is kind of like spurred on just by the underlying foundations of the technology. When you build it in this other like weird closed off way, like it just doesn't have that like you say, like emergent property. It's almost like it's like evolution, right? It's not this. So if you imagine this centralized proprietary software kind of way, it's very linear. It's very focused, right? You just have this like narrow lane. Whereas if you imagine like the process of evolution, this is kind of how like decentralized and open source things kind of work. It's almost like a mesh, and there's things coming in from the side, and maybe this is a bit hard to understand why I'm trying to do sort of hand movements. But if you can imagine, just for the audience, the proprietary software and these permission systems are very narrow. Whereas if you imagine like the process of evolution, where there's millions of complex interactions all creating this thing in an organic way, like that to me is really cool, conceptually. And I actually just think it's a better model. It's just a better model.
So I'll tell you another way to think about it. So there are two. This is a made up story, but there were two engineers, and they wanted to build a bridge across a river, and like there's a town on each side of the river. So this one engineer spent like 5 years designing the perfect bridge and everything, but he built it like slightly too far. Like this, he built this perfect bridge, but no one used it, and he was like, "Why is no one using it?" And then he walked up the river like a few kilometers and found like another bridge, which was just like hobbled together out of like random bits and pieces, but everyone's using it. It's just full of traffic all the time. And he asked the engineer behind that bridge, like, how did you get everyone to use this piece of shit bridge, basically? And the guy's like, well, I just threw a rope across the river first, and then we just put a pulley on it, and people could send goods across. And then that gained traction, and then so we put another rope, and then another rope, and then we added like some slats to it so people could walk across, and then like it just kept getting bigger and bigger, right? So like it's like you need the freedom to be able to do that kind of thing. You can't if you need to be perfect as soon as you release something, no one's ever going to use it. Unless and because you're not accurate, your solution is not accurate. It's not in the right place. So it's like it's the way humans solve problems is we pile problems and solutions on top of each other, and combine them together, and like that's. I mean, you understand this obviously from what you just said, but like I just I wanted to say that a different way of thinking about it.